Sergeant First Class Nia Thorne watched 17 faces turn toward her with expressions ranging from confusion to barely contained laughter. The equipment request form lay on the metal table between them, her precise handwriting somehow appearing foolish under the harsh fluorescent lights of the briefing room. Staff Sergeant Kellerman picked up the paper, squinting at her weapon selection as if the words might rearrange themselves into something sensible. "You sure about this, Thorne?" Kellerman asked, his voice carrying just enough volume that the entire Special Operations team could hear. "A Remington 700 with standard iron sights?" He shook his head slowly, the gesture theatrical enough to draw chuckles from the assembled soldiers. "We're talking about precision work at extended range, not hunting deer in Pennsylvania." Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've seen similar military training exercises in your area, or perhaps you come from a family with military traditions. Specialist Cordero leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his tactical vest. "She's kidding, right?" His question hung in the air while he gestured toward the advanced equipment spread across nearby tables. "Look around, Thorne. We've got Barrett M82S, Macmillan TAC-50S, every piece of high-tech precision equipment the Army can provide. And you want to take your grandfather's hunting rifle?" The laughter that followed was not cruel, but it carried the unmistakable weight of professional judgment. These were seasoned operators who had earned their positions through years of demonstrated competence. Their doubt was not personal mockery, but the legitimate concern of soldiers whose lives might depend on each team member's capabilities. Yet the sound still stung, particularly when Master Sergeant Vance joined the conversation. Vance stepped closer to the table, his weathered hands picking up her request form with the careful attention of someone examining evidence. "Nia, I've seen your scores on the range. Solid work, no question. But this mission requires surgical precision at distances your weapon simply cannot handle effectively." He set the paper down gently, his tone shifting toward paternal concern. "The targets are confirmed at 1,200 to 1,500 meters. With iron sights and standard ammunition, you'd be guessing at windage and elevation." Technical Sergeant Malik nodded in agreement from his position near the communications equipment. "The math doesn't work," he said simply. "At that distance, with those specifications, margin of error becomes unacceptable. One miss compromises the entire operation and potentially puts teammates at risk." Nia remained silent throughout the exchange, her hands clasped behind her back in the parade rest position she had maintained since entering the room. Her olive-green uniform was regulation perfect, every crease sharp, every button properly fastened. Nothing about her appearance suggested the kind of operator who would make equipment decisions based on sentiment or stubbornness. Yet here she stood, defending a weapon choice that seemed to defy tactical logic. Captain Torres emerged from the back corner where he had been studying satellite imagery of their target location. His approach commanded immediate attention, the room falling silent as he walked toward the equipment table. Torres had earned respect through 3 combat deployments and a reputation for tactical brilliance that had saved countless lives. When he spoke, people listened. "Thorne, help me understand your reasoning," Torres said, his voice carrying genuine curiosity rather than dismissal. "The mission parameters are clear. Long-range precision shots in an environment where second chances don't exist. Every other team member has selected equipment specifically designed for these conditions." He picked up a Barrett M82 from the nearby rack, its advanced optics and precision engineering gleaming under the room's lighting. "This weapon system can reliably engage targets at twice your effective range with significantly greater accuracy. Walk me through your tactical thinking." The question hung in the air while 19 pairs of eyes focused on her response. Some faces showed open skepticism. Others displayed the polite attention of professionals waiting for an explanation that might justify what appeared to be a fundamentally flawed decision. The silence stretched long enough that someone in the back shifted uncomfortably in their chair. "Sir, with respect," Nia finally said, her voice steady despite the weight of collective doubt pressing down on her. I understand the concern about range and precision. But this weapon has capabilities that aren't immediately apparent in standard specifications. The room remained silent, waiting for elaboration that might illuminate her reasoning. However, before she could continue, the briefing room door opened with enough force to draw every eye toward the entrance. The figure silhouetted against the corridor lighting would change everything about this conversation, though none of them knew it yet. The figure entering the briefing room was Colonel Patricia Hayes, whose presence immediately shifted the atmosphere from casual skepticism to professional attention. Hayes carried herself with the measured confidence of someone who had earned stars through decades of exemplary service, and her arrival meant the mission briefing was about to begin in earnest. She nodded briefly toward Captain Torres before taking her position at the front of the room. "As you were," Hayes said, settling her materials on the podium while the team returned to their previous discussion. The colonel's presence did nothing to diminish the ongoing concern about Naya's equipment choice, and if anything, the proximity of senior leadership made the weapon selection seem even more questionable. Specialist Cordero seized the opportunity to voice his concerns to higher authority. "Ma'am, we were just discussing Sergeant Thorne's equipment request." His tone remained respectful, but carried unmistakable urgency. "Given the mission parameters you're about to brief, some of us have concerns about weapon system compatibility with operational requirements." Colonel Hayes glanced at the request form that Captain Torres handed her, her expression neutral as she examined Naya's specifications. The silence that followed felt heavier than before, weighted with the implications of a senior officer's judgment about to be rendered. Around the room, team members exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their expectations. Technical Sergeant Malik decided to elaborate on the technical concerns. "Ma'am, the engagement distances we're anticipating are well beyond effective range for standard hunting rifles. Modern precision systems offer ballistic computers, advanced optics, and specialized ammunition that provide significant advantages in the operational environment we'll be facing." Master Sergeant Vance stepped forward, his years of experience evident in every word. "Colonel, I've worked with Sergeant Thorne extensively. She's a capable soldier with solid fundamentals. But this mission requires capabilities that exceed what iron sights and standard ammunition can deliver. The margin for error is simply too narrow for anything less than optimal equipment." Hayes listened to each concern with the patient attention of a commander who understood that equipment failures could cost lives. Her years of experience had taught her that overconfidence in inadequate gear was one of the fastest ways to turn successful operations into disasters. The skepticism filling the room was not unfounded pessimism, but legitimate tactical assessment. Staff Sergeant Kellerman joined the conversation with additional details that deepened the concern. "Ma'am, I've reviewed the preliminary target analysis. We're looking at multiple engagement zones across varied terrain with environmental factors that will challenge even our best precision systems. Wind patterns, atmospheric density, temperature variations. These conditions demand equipment designed specifically for extreme range precision work." The weight of professional opinion was becoming overwhelming. Each team member who spoke did so from a foundation of extensive combat experience and technical expertise. Their concerns were not based on prejudice or assumption, but on mathematical realities that governed projectile physics and operational success rates. The collective judgment was creating an atmosphere where Naya's choice seemed increasingly indefensible. Sergeant First Class Devin Montague, who had remained silent until now, decided to offer what he considered a diplomatic solution. "Perhaps we could arrange for Sergeant Thorne to have backup systems available. Primary weapon of her choice, with secondary precision platforms ready if conditions require them." This approach acknowledged her preference while ensuring mission success remained the priority. Captain Torres appreciated Montague's diplomatic approach, but felt compelled to address the underlying issue more directly. "The concern isn't about having backup options," he said. "Every operator needs to have complete confidence in their primary weapon system. If we're questioning effectiveness before deployment, we're setting up potential hesitation in critical moments." Specialist Reeves, who had extensive experience with long-range precision systems, added another layer of technical concern. Ma'am, ballistic trajectory at those distances requires precise calculations that iron sights simply cannot accommodate. Environmental compensation, range estimation, target movement prediction. These factors become exponentially more challenging without advanced optic systems and ballistic computers. Colonel Hayes absorbed every comment while maintaining her neutral expression. Her experience had taught her that equipment debates often revealed deeper issues about team confidence and operational readiness. The unanimous concern about Naya's weapon choice was creating exactly the kind of doubt that could undermine mission effectiveness before they even deployed. Throughout this extended discussion, Naya maintained her position at parade rest, listening to each criticism without visible reaction. Her composure was professional and appropriate, but it did nothing to address the fundamental concerns being raised about her tactical judgment. If anything, her silence was being interpreted as stubborn attachment to an unsuitable weapon rather than confidence in capabilities yet to be demonstrated. The mounting skepticism reached a point where Colonel Hayes felt compelled to address the issue directly before proceeding with the operational briefing. "Sergeant Thorne," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected lives, "I need you to help me understand how your equipment choice serves mission objectives." These are experienced operators raising legitimate tactical concerns. Naya straightened slightly, meeting Colonel Hayes' direct gaze with unwavering eyes. "Ma'am, this weapon system has proven effective in similar operational environments. My familiarity with its characteristics provides advantages that outweigh the technical specifications on paper." Her response was measured and professional, but it did nothing to address the specific concerns about range and precision that had dominated the discussion. Specialist Cordero shook his head almost imperceptibly, his expression suggesting that familiarity was a poor substitute for technological capability. "We're not talking about paper specifications, Sergeant. These are physical limitations that no amount of practice can overcome. Projectile drop, wind drift, target acquisition at extreme range. The physics don't change because you're comfortable with the weapon." Colonel Hayes decided to move forward with the mission briefing, hoping that concrete details about their objectives might clarify why the equipment concerns were so critical. She activated the wall-mounted display system, revealing satellite imagery of a remote mountainous region that immediately captured everyone's attention. The terrain was forbidding, with steep ridges and deep valleys that would challenge even the most experienced operators. "Your target area is here," Hayes said, using a laser pointer to highlight specific locations on the imagery. "Intelligence indicates hostile forces have established observation posts at elevations ranging from 800 to 1,200 meters above your insertion point. The distances you'll be engaging are confirmed between 1,100 and 1,600 meters across varied elevation changes." The silence that followed was profound as team members absorbed the implications of these specifications. Even with advanced precision systems, these were challenging shots that would test the limits of equipment and operator skill. The idea of attempting such engagements with iron sights seemed to border on the impossible. Technical Sergeant Malik leaned forward in his chair, studying the topographical details with growing concern. "Ma'am, those elevation changes create additional ballistic complications. Atmospheric density variations, angle compensation requirements. Even our most sophisticated systems will require careful environmental calculations for reliable hits at those ranges." Master Sergeant Vance pointed towards specific features on the satellite imagery, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had attempted similar shots in comparable terrain. "Colonel, I count at least 7 potential engagement positions where environmental factors will significantly impact projectile behavior. Crosswinds funneling through those valley systems, temperature gradients between ridge lines. These conditions demand every technological advantage we could deploy." Staff Sergeant Kellerman was studying the mission timeline displayed alongside the terrain imagery. "Ma'am, if I'm reading this correctly, we have narrow windows for each engagement. multiple targets that must be neutralized within specific time frames to maintain operational security. There's no room for ranging shots or environmental compensation through trial and error. The mission parameters were painting a picture that made Naya's weapon choice seem increasingly problematic. Every detail Hayes revealed reinforced the team's concerns about precision requirements and environmental challenges that would stretch even advanced systems to their limits. The collective expertise in the room was reaching consensus that this was exactly the kind of operation where equipment selection could determine mission success or failure. Captain Torres studied the target area with the focused attention of someone responsible for operational planning. Colonel, those observation posts appear to be hardened positions with limited exposure windows for potential targets. We're talking about precision shots through restricted apertures at maximum effective range. The margin for error is essentially zero. Specialist Reeves raised his hand to ask for clarification about a specific aspect of the mission profile. Ma'am, are we confirmed for single-shot opportunities on each target? The positioning suggests that second chances will be unlikely if initial engagements alert the hostile forces to our presence. Colonel et Noded Grimley. Intelligence assessment indicates that any missed shots will result in immediate area saturation and rapid response from nearby support elements. Each engagement must achieve first-round effectiveness to maintain the element of surprise and operational security. The weight of this information settled over the room like a heavy blanket. First-round hits at extreme range through challenging environmental conditions with no opportunity for correction or adjustment. These requirements represented the absolute pinnacle of precision shooting, demanding every possible advantage that technology and training could provide. Sergeant First Class Montague looked directly at Naya, his expression reflecting genuine concern rather than mockery. Thorne, I understand confidence in your equipment, but these parameters are beyond what any of us have attempted with standard systems. We're talking about shots that challenge the theoretical limits of conventional rifles under ideal conditions. Technical Sergeant Malik added another layer of complexity to the discussion. The environmental data shows temperature ranges from -10 to +15 Celsius across the operational area. Those temperature swings alone will create significant point-of impact shifts that require compensation beyond what iron sights can provide. Naya listened to each additional concern while maintaining her professional composure, but the mounting evidence against her equipment choice was becoming difficult to ignore. Every mission detail that Colonel Hayes revealed seemed to validate the team's skepticism and highlight the apparent inadequacy of her weapon selection for the challenges ahead. Colonel Hayes continued revealing operational details that painted an increasingly complex picture of the challenges ahead. The mission timeline displayed on the screen showed a compressed sequence of events that would require flawless execution from every team member. Each phase built upon the previous one, creating a domino effect where any single failure could compromise the entire operation. Weather patterns indicate a 12-hour window with relatively stable atmospheric conditions, Hayes explained, highlighting meteorological data alongside the terrain imagery. However, even within that window, wind patterns will shift significantly between valley systems. Intelligence shows gusts ranging from 5 to 25 knots with directional changes that follow the topographical features. Specialist Cordero studied the wind data with growing apprehension. Ma'am, those wind variations represent multiple minutes of angle adjustment requirements across the engagement distances. Modern ballistic computers can calculate those corrections in real time, but manual compensation with iron sights would require extensive environmental observation and mathematical calculation between each shot. The complexity was becoming staggering. Professional snipers with years of experience and advanced equipment would find these conditions challenging. The idea of attempting such precision work with a hunting rifle and iron sights seemed to defy reasonable tactical judgment. Around the room, expressions reflected the growing consensus that Naya's equipment choice represented a fundamental misunderstanding of operational requirements. Master Sergeant Vance pointed towards specific features on the topographical display. "Colonel, I noticed several of these observation posts are positioned on reverse slopes. That means we'll be shooting across valleys with significant elevation changes that create complex ballistic trajectories. The angle compensation alone requires precision instruments that iron sights simply cannot provide." Technical Sergeant Malik nodded in agreement while examining the mathematical implications of the shot angles. The ballistic coefficient calculation for those trajectories become exponentially more difficult without computerized assistance. We're talking about multiple variables that must be processed simultaneously for each engagement. Temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, wind speed and direction, angle compensation, target movement potential. Staff Sergeant Kellerman had been quietly studying the mission timeline and now raised additional concerns about the operational tempo. "Ma'am, the engagement sequence shows multiple targets that must be neutralized within 40-minute windows. That time frame includes movement between positions, environmental assessment, and target acquisition. There's minimal time for manual ballistic calculations between shots." Captain Torres approached the display to examine the infiltration routes that would bring them into position for the precision shots. "Colonel, these approach vectors require movement across exposed terrain with limited concealment opportunities. If our precision fails and requires follow-up shots, we'll be compromised in positions with restricted egress options." The implications were becoming clear to everyone in the room. This was not a mission where approximation or second attempts would be acceptable. Every shot had to be perfect on the first attempt, or the entire team would face consequences that could range from mission failure to casualties. The margin for error was so narrow that equipment selection became a life-or-death decision affecting every team member. Specialist Reeves raised his hand to ask about target identification procedures. "Ma'am, what's the protocol for target confirmation at those distances?" Visual identification through standard optics will be challenging, particularly if targets are wearing similar uniforms or equipment to friendly forces in the area. Colonel Hayes nodded, acknowledging the complexity of target identification at extreme range. Intelligence has provided detailed descriptions and photographic references for primary targets. However, positive identification will require magnified optics with sufficient clarity to distinguish individual features and equipment configurations. The target identification requirement added another layer of difficulty to Naya's equipment choice. Iron sights provided no magnification capability, making positive target identification at extreme range nearly impossible. Even if she could somehow compensate for all the ballistic challenges, the fundamental problem of seeing targets clearly enough to confirm identity remained unsolved. Sergeant First Class Montague decided to address this concern directly. "Sergeant Thorne, even if we set aside the ballistic limitations, how do you plan to achieve positive target identification at 1,500 meters with unmagnified sights? The safety protocol requires visual confirmation before engagement, and iron sights simply don't provide the resolution necessary for that identification." Technical Sergeant Malik added support to Montague's concern with specific technical details. "At those distances, a human target represents approximately 1 minute of angle through iron sights. That's roughly the size of the front sight post itself. Distinguishing individual features or equipment details becomes physically impossible without optical magnification." The room fell silent as the weight of these accumulated concerns settled over the discussion. Every aspect of the mission that Colonel Hayes revealed seemed to highlight another fundamental limitation of Naya's equipment choice. The challenges were not theoretical or based on preferences, but concrete operational requirements that appeared impossible to meet with her selected weapon system. Naya remained at attention throughout this detailed analysis, her expression unchanged despite the mounting evidence against her position. Her silence was beginning to feel stubborn rather than confident, particularly as each new mission detail reinforced the professional judgment of her teammates. The gulf between her choice and tactical reality was becoming impossible to ignore. Colonel Hayes activated another section of the briefing display, revealing detailed environmental data that made the operational challenges even more daunting. The atmospheric conditions in the target area showed variations that would test even the most sophisticated equipment, and the information cast further doubt on the viability of Naya's weapon selection. Environmental sensors in the area indicate significant atmospheric density variations between the valley floor and ridge positions, Hayes explained, pointing to data charts that showed complex patterns of air pressure and temperature. These variations create unpredictable ballistic effects that change throughout the day as thermal currents shift with solar heating and cooling cycles. Specialist Cordero studied the atmospheric data with the focused attention of someone who understood its implications for long-range precision shooting. Ma'am, those density variations can cause point-of impact shifts of several minutes of angle across the engagement distances. Modern ballistic computers can compensate for real-time atmospheric changes, but manual calculation requires extensive environmental monitoring equipment and mathematical processing time. The complexity was staggering. Professional precision shooters relied on sophisticated instruments to measure atmospheric conditions and advanced computers to calculate their effects on projectile trajectory. The idea of attempting such compensation manually with basic equipment seemed to approach the impossible, particularly under the time constraints of active operations. Technical Sergeant Malik examined the wind data more closely, noting patterns that created additional complications for precision shooting. Colonel, these thermal gradients are generating wind shear effects between different elevation layers. A projectile traveling through that airspace will encounter multiple wind zones with varying speeds and directions during flight time. Master Sergeant Vance nodded grimly as he absorbed the implications of the wind shear data. Those conditions mean that surface wind readings won't accurately represent the full trajectory environment. You need multiple observation points and real-time wind measurement at various altitudes to make accurate corrections. Iron sights provide no capability for such complex environmental assessment. Staff Sergeant Kellerman was studying the mission timeline alongside the environmental data, noting how atmospheric conditions would change throughout their operational window. Ma'am, these thermal patterns show significant wind shifts every 2 to 3 hours. Our engagement sequence could span multiple wind pattern changes, requiring constant recalibration between shots. The environmental challenges were painting a picture of conditions that would challenge even Olympic-level precision shooters with unlimited preparation time and ideal equipment. The idea of achieving mission-critical accuracy under these conditions with a hunting rifle seemed to border on fantasy rather than tactical planning. Captain Torres approached the display to examine the correlation between terrain features and wind patterns. Colonel, these ridge systems are creating Venturi effects that accelerate wind speeds in specific areas while creating calm zones in others. Predicting which zones a projectile will encounter during flight becomes a complex meteorological calculation. Specialist Reeves raised concerns about the practical implications of environmental monitoring during active operations. Ma'am, gathering the atmospheric data necessary for manual ballistic calculations would require extensive observation time at each firing position. That conflicts with the rapid engagement timeline and increases exposure risk for the entire team. The operational tempo was another factor working against Naya's equipment choice. Professional snipers with advanced systems could make rapid environmental assessments and ballistic calculations through computerized assistance. Manual methods required time and instruments that simply weren't available during dynamic military operations where speed and stealth were essential for survival. Sergeant First Class Montague decided to address the practical reality of environmental compensation under combat conditions. Sergeant Thorne, even if you had the mathematical skills to perform these calculations manually, the time required for environmental assessment at each position would compromise operational security. We can't spend 30 minutes measuring wind and atmospheric conditions when a mission timeline allows 10 minutes per engagement. Technical Sergeant Malik added specific details about the instruments required for accurate environmental assessment. Manual ballistic calculation requires precise measurement of temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, and wind conditions at multiple altitudes. That equipment package weighs approximately 15 pounds and requires several minutes of setup time for accurate readings. The weight and time requirements for proper environmental assessment equipment created additional problems for NIA's approach. Special operations demanded mobility and speed, with every piece of equipment carefully selected for essential capability versus weight considerations. Carrying instruments for manual ballistic calculation would compromise movement efficiency while still providing inferior accuracy compared to integrated systems. Colonel Hayes observed the mounting technical concerns with the patient attention of a commander who understood that equipment failures could result in mission failure and casualties. The unanimous professional judgment of experienced operators was creating a clear consensus that NIA's weapon choice represented unacceptable risk to mission success and team safety. Staff Sergeant Kellerman summarized the accumulated environmental concerns with mathematical precision. Ma'am, when we factor in atmospheric density variations, wind shear effects, thermal gradients, and measurement limitations, the probability of first-round hits at mission distances drops below acceptable thresholds. We're discussing precision requirements that exceed the theoretical capability of iron sights under these specific conditions. Colonel Hayes paused the environmental briefing to address what had become an unavoidable issue affecting the entire team's confidence in mission success. The accumulated technical concerns about NIA's equipment choice had reached a point where command intervention seemed necessary to maintain operational readiness and team cohesion. Sergeant Thorne, Hayes said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions under pressure, I'm going to authorize alternative equipment options for your consideration. The mission parameters we've discussed exceed the capability envelope of standard hunting rifles, regardless of operator skill level. Captain Torres stepped forward, gesturing toward the advanced precision systems arranged on nearby equipment tables. Sergeant, we have Barrett M82 systems with programmable ballistic computers, Schmidt and Bender optics with integrated range-finding capability, and specialized ammunition designed specifically for extreme-range precision work. These systems are purpose-built for exactly the conditions we'll be facing. Technical Sergeant Malik approached one of the precision rifles, handling it with the reverence of someone who understood its technological sophistication. This Barrett system can calculate environmental corrections in real time, compensate for atmospheric variations automatically, and provide target identification capability at ranges exceeding our mission requirements. The integrated ballistic computer eliminates human error in mathematical calculations. Master Sergeant Vance joined the equipment demonstration, pointing out specific features that addressed the environmental challenges they had been discussing. The Schmidt and Bender optics provide 25 power magnification with first focal plane reticles that maintain accuracy across the entire zoom range. Target identification at 1,500 meters becomes straightforward rather than impossible. Specialist Cordero was examining ammunition specifications that highlighted another advantage of the advanced systems. Ma'am, these precision platforms use match-grade ammunition with ballistic coefficients specifically designed for extreme-range accuracy. The projectile characteristics are optimized for consistent performance across varying atmospheric conditions. The contrast between the available advanced systems and NIA's chosen equipment was becoming stark. Every component of the modern precision platforms had been engineered to address specific challenges that our hunting rifle simply could not overcome. The technology represented decades of development focused on solving exactly the problems they would face during the mission. Staff Sergeant Kellerman was studying the ballistic computer display on one of the Barrett systems, noting how it processed multiple environmental variables simultaneously. Sergeant Thorne, this computer calculates trajectory corrections faster than you could manually measure a single environmental variable. It processes temperature, pressure, humidity, wind speed, range, and angle compensation in seconds rather than minutes. Specialist Reeves demonstrated the range-finding capability of the advanced optics, showing how target distance could be determined instantly rather than estimated through visual reference. The laser rangefinder provides precise distance measurement to within 1 meter at maximum engagement range. That eliminates one of the largest sources of error in manual ballistic calculation. Sergeant First Class Montague approached the discussion from a team safety perspective, emphasizing how equipment selection affected everyone's operational security. Thorn, when we're positioned in exposed terrain with limited egress routes, first-round accuracy becomes a team survival issue. Missing shots and requiring follow-up attempts compromises everyone's safety, not just the shooter's effectiveness. Colonel Hayes decided to make the offer of alternative equipment official, removing any procedural barriers that might prevent Naya from making a more appropriate choice. Sergeant, I'm authorizing immediate access to any precision system in our inventory. You can train with these platforms during our preparation phase and select whatever configuration provides optimal capability for mission success. The generous offer of unlimited equipment access demonstrated Command's commitment to mission success over individual preferences. Hayes was providing every possible resource to ensure that equipment limitations did not become the cause of operational failure or casualties among the team members. Technical Sergeant Malik outlined the training support that would be available for transitioning to advanced systems. We can provide accelerated familiarization training with any platform you select. These systems are designed for rapid operator transition, with intuitive controls and automated features that minimize learning curve requirements. Captain Torres emphasized the time available for equipment transition and training. We have 72 hours before deployment, which provides sufficient time for platform familiarization and zero confirmation. Professional operators have successfully transitioned to these systems in much shorter time frames when mission requirements demanded it. The room fell silent as everyone waited for Naya's response to what represented an exceptionally generous offer of alternatives. Command was providing access to the finest precision equipment available, expert training support, and adequate time for familiarization. The offer addressed every concern that had been raised about her original equipment choice. Master Sergeant Vance decided to emphasize the practical benefits of accepting the equipment alternatives. Sergeant, these systems don't just provide better accuracy. They reduce operator workload, eliminate calculation errors, and provide confidence that translates into effective performance under pressure. Every advantage we can deploy serves the mission and protects the team. Naya remained at attention throughout this extensive offer of alternatives, her expression unchanged despite the obvious benefits of the advanced systems being demonstrated around her. Her continued silence was beginning to feel less like confidence and more like stubborn attachment to an inadequate solution for complex operational requirements. Naya finally broke her extended silence, her voice steady despite the weight of professional judgment that had accumulated against her position. Ma'am, I appreciate the offer of alternative equipment, but I respectfully maintain my original selection. This weapon system will perform effectively within mission parameters. The response sent a ripple of disbelief through the assembled team members. After extensive technical analysis demonstrating the inadequacy of her choice, detailed environmental briefings highlighting impossible challenges, and generous offers of superior alternatives, she remained committed to what appeared to be a fundamentally flawed decision. Specialist Cordero shook his head in visible frustration, his professional composure cracking slightly. Sergeant, we just spent an hour documenting why that rifle cannot meet mission requirements. Are you suggesting that mathematics and physics somehow don't apply to your weapon system? Technical Sergeant Malik leaned back in his chair, his expression reflecting the bewilderment of someone watching a colleague reject logic itself. I don't understand the reasoning here. We're offering you access to equipment that solves every problem we've identified. Why would you choose inferior capability when superior options are available? Master Sergeant Vance approached the situation from a leadership perspective, trying to understand whether there were factors he had missed in the discussion. Sergeant Thorne, help me understand if there's something about your weapon that we haven't considered. Some capability or characteristic that isn't apparent from standard specifications. The request for clarification was reasonable and professional, offering Naya an opportunity to explain the reasoning behind her seemingly irrational equipment choice. Around the room, faces showed varying degrees of confusion and concern as team members struggled to comprehend her persistence in maintaining an inadequate solution. Staff Sergeant Kellerman decided to address the issue more directly, his tone carrying the weight of someone responsible for team effectiveness under combat conditions. Thorne, individual preferences don't override tactical requirements when team safety is involved. If you can't provide specific justification for your equipment choice, command needs to make the decision for you. Colonel Hayes had been observing the exchange with growing concern about team dynamics and mission readiness. The equipment debate was consuming time and energy that should have been focused on operational preparation, and the apparent stubbornness was beginning to affect team confidence in Naya's judgment overall. Sergeant Thorne, Hayes said, her voice carrying unmistakable command authority, I need specific technical justification for your equipment selection. What capabilities does your rifle possess that make it superior to the alternatives we've offered for this particular mission profile? The direct question from command demanded a substantive response that could withstand professional scrutiny. Naya's previous answers had been vague references to familiarity and capability without addressing the specific technical limitations that had been documented throughout the briefing. Captain Torres stepped closer, his expression reflecting genuine concern about operational readiness. Sergeant, we've identified fundamental physics limitations that cannot be overcome through training or familiarity. Iron sights cannot provide target identification at mission ranges. Standard ammunition cannot deliver required precision under documented environmental conditions. How do you propose to overcome these limitations? Specialist Reeves joined the questioning with specific technical challenges that demanded concrete answers. Sergeant Thorne, at 1,500 meters in 20-knot crosswinds with temperature gradients creating atmospheric density variations, what is your method for calculating windage and elevation corrections using iron sights? The technical specificity of the question highlighted the gap between Naya's general claims about capability and the mathematical realities of extreme-range precision shooting. Professional snipers required extensive training and sophisticated equipment to make such calculations, and the suggestion that iron sights could substitute for ballistic computers seemed to defy established expertise. Sergeant First Class Montague tried a different approach, focusing on team cohesion rather than technical arguments. Thorne, we're all professionals here with years of experience in precision shooting. When the entire team reaches consensus about equipment limitations, maybe it's worth reconsidering individual positions for the sake of mission success. Technical Sergeant Malik decided to present the issue in terms of probability and risk assessment. Sergeant, even if your rifle theoretically could make these shots under perfect conditions, mission success requires near certainty rather than possibility. We need equipment that provides maximum probability of first-round hits, not systems that might work under ideal circumstances. The risk assessment approach highlighted another fundamental problem with Naya's choice. Military operations demanded reliability and predictability, with equipment selected to provide maximum probability of success under worst-case conditions. Choosing systems that might work represented unacceptable risk when team lives depended on mission effectiveness. Colonel Hayes decided that the equipment debate had consumed enough time and energy without resolution. Sergeant Thorne, you have 12 hours to provide specific technical documentation supporting your equipment choice. If you cannot demonstrate superior capability compared to available alternatives, I will make the equipment selection decision myself based on mission requirements and team safety considerations. The ultimatum represented command intervention in what had become an intractable dispute between individual preference and professional judgment. Hayes was providing one final opportunity for Naya to justify her position before exercising command authority to ensure mission success. The 12-hour ultimatum cast a shadow over the remainder of the mission briefing as team members struggled to focus on operational details while harboring serious doubts about their precision shooter's judgment. Colonel Hayes continued with intelligence updates and tactical assignments, but the unresolved equipment issue created an undercurrent of tension that affected everyone's concentration. During the break that followed the formal briefing, small groups of team members gathered to discuss their concerns about Naya's apparent unwillingness to accept superior alternatives. The conversations were professional but reflected genuine worry about mission effectiveness and team safety under the circumstances. Specialist Cordero found himself talking with Technical Sergeant Malik near the equipment tables, their voices low but their concern evident. I've worked with stubborn operators before, but this goes beyond individual preference. We're talking about fundamental mission requirements that her equipment simply cannot meet. Malik nodded while examining one of the Barrett systems that Naya had rejected. The math is irrefutable. At those ranges, under those conditions, with those time constraints, iron sights represent a probability of success that approaches zero. It's not about skill or experience. It's about physics. Master Sergeant Vance joined their conversation, bringing years of leadership experience to bear on what had become a command challenge as much as an equipment issue. The problem isn't just technical capability. When one team member makes decisions that appear irrational to everyone else, it undermines confidence in their judgment across all mission aspects. Staff Sergeant Kellerman was having a similar discussion with Specialist Reeves and Sergeant First Class Montague near the tactical planning boards. His concerns extended beyond equipment to broader questions about operational readiness and team dynamics under stress. What worries me most is the apparent disconnect from reality, Kellerman said quietly. We've presented overwhelming evidence about equipment limitations, offered generous alternatives, and received responses that seem to ignore mathematical facts. That suggests judgment problems that could affect other mission decisions. Specialist Reeves agreed, while studying the mission timeline that would require split-second decision-making under extreme pressure. If someone can't acknowledge clear technical limitations during calm briefing conditions, how will they respond to dynamic challenges during actual operations? The mission allows no margin for poor judgment calls. Sergeant First Class Montague approached the issue from a different angle, considering whether there might be factors they hadn't discovered that could explain Naya's confidence in her equipment choice. Maybe there's something we don't know about her background or training that would make sense of this decision. But if so, why wouldn't she explain it instead of maintaining silence? Captain Torres had been observing these conversations while reviewing operational plans, noting how the equipment controversy was affecting team cohesion and confidence. The fragmented discussions indicated that doubt about Naya's judgment was spreading beyond technical concerns to broader questions about her suitability for the mission. Colonel Hayes recognized the developing morale problem and decided to address it directly rather than allowing uncertainty to undermine team effectiveness. She gathered the assembled operators for what amounted to damage control before the situation deteriorated further. I understand everyone's concerns about equipment selection and technical capabilities, Hayes said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to managing complex personnel issues under pressure. However, second-guessing team members during mission preparation is counterproductive unless it leads to constructive solutions. Technical Sergeant Malik felt compelled to voice the collective concern that had been building throughout the day. Ma'am, this isn't about second-guessing individual preferences. We've documented specific technical limitations that could compromise mission success and team safety. At what point does professional responsibility require intervention? The question highlighted the fundamental tension between individual autonomy and collective responsibility that often emerged during high-stakes operations. Military effectiveness depended on both individual competence and team cohesion, creating challenges when the two seemed to conflict. Master Sergeant Vance supported Malik's position with additional perspective about leadership responsibility under combat conditions. Colonel, when we deploy into hostile territory with lives, depending on precision shooting, equipment selection becomes a team issue rather than individual choice. Everyone's safety is affected by each person's capabilities. Staff Sergeant Kellerman added operational context that emphasized the stakes involved in the equipment decision. Ma'am, mission failure due to equipment inadequacy affects more than just our team. Intelligence indicates that follow-up operations depend on our success, potentially putting additional forces at risk if we cannot achieve mission objectives. Colonel Hayes absorbed these concerns while weighing her options for maintaining both mission effectiveness and team unity. The equipment controversy had reached a point where command decisions seemed inevitable, but timing and method remained critical factors in preserving operational readiness. Specialist Cordero decided to present the issue in terms of mathematical probability rather than personal judgment. Ma'am, we can calculate success probability based on equipment capabilities, environmental conditions, and mission requirements. The numbers don't support iron sight effectiveness under these specific parameters. The appeal to mathematical analysis rather than opinion provided Hayes with a framework for making an objective decision based on measurable factors rather than subjective preferences. However, the 12-hour deadline she had established for Naya's technical justification remained in effect, creating a window for potential resolution before command intervention became necessary. 8 hours remained before Colonel Hayes' ultimatum deadline, and the tension in the preparation area had become palpable as team members continued their mission preparations while casting worried glances toward Naya's position. She had spent the intervening time maintaining her equipment with methodical precision, seemingly oblivious to the mounting concern about her weapon choice that dominated every conversation around her. Technical Sergeant Malik approached Captain Torres with updated calculations that reinforced the mathematical impossibility of Naya's proposed approach. Sir, I've run the numbers through 3 different ballistic programs using the environmental data from our target area. Even with perfect wind reading and atmospheric measurement, iron sight accuracy at mission distances falls below acceptable probability thresholds. Torres examined the detailed calculations while shaking his head at the stark mathematical evidence. These projections assume ideal conditions with no measurement errors, perfect ammunition consistency, and optimal shooting technique. Under actual field conditions with time pressure and environmental variables, success probability approaches statistical insignificance. Master Sergeant Vance had been observing Naya's equipment preparation from across the room, noting her careful attention to details that seemed inadequate for the challenges they would face. Her rifle cleaning and sight adjustment appeared competent but ordinary, showing no indication of special modifications or capabilities that might explain her confidence in its performance. Staff Sergeant Kellerman joined Vance's observation, studying Naya's methodical preparation routine. I don't see anything exceptional about her equipment maintenance. Standard field cleaning, basic sight adjustment, routine ammunition inspection. Nothing that would indicate capabilities beyond normal hunting rifle specifications. Specialist Cordero had been researching the technical specifications of Naya's chosen rifle model, hoping to discover some performance characteristic that might justify her selection. The manufacturer data confirms everything we suspected. Maximum effective range for precision shooting is documented at 600 meters under ideal conditions. Mission requirements exceed that by more than double. Specialist Reeves was examining ammunition specifications, looking for any advantage that might explain Naya's confidence in her system. The cartridge she selected is standard hunting ammunition with ballistic characteristics inferior to match-grade precision rounds. Bullet drop and wind drift at mission ranges will be significantly greater than optimal alternatives. Sergeant First Class Montague decided to make one final attempt at reasonable discussion with Naya before the deadline expired. He approached her position where she was performing final adjustments to her rifle scope mounts, though the basic iron sights remained her stated preference for the actual mission. Thorne, he said quietly, trying to avoid drawing attention from other team members, I'm hoping you'll reconsider the equipment alternatives before Colonel Hayes makes the decision for you. We're all professionals here who want mission success and everyone's safe return. Naya looked up from her rifle maintenance, meeting his gaze with steady eyes that showed no indication of doubt or uncertainty. Sergeant Montague, I understand your concern. but this system will perform as required. The mission parameters are within capability envelope, and familiarity advantages outweigh theoretical specifications. Her response maintained the same confident tone that had characterized her position throughout the extended controversy, but still provided no specific technical justification for rejecting superior alternatives. The vague reference to familiarity advantages did not address the mathematical impossibilities that had been documented by multiple team members. Montague tried a different approach, focusing on team cohesion rather than technical arguments. Thorne, when experienced operators reach unanimous consensus about equipment limitations, it might indicate that outside perspective could be valuable. Sometimes individual attachment to familiar systems can cloud judgment about optimal solutions. The diplomatic suggestion that her judgment might be compromised by emotional attachment to familiar equipment was as close as military protocol allowed to suggesting that her decision-making was fundamentally flawed. Montague was offering her a face-saving opportunity to reconsider without directly challenging her competence. Meanwhile, Colonel Hayes was reviewing the mission timeline with growing awareness that the equipment controversy was consuming preparation time that should have been devoted to tactical coordination and team integration. The unresolved issue was becoming a distraction that could affect overall mission readiness beyond the specific question of precision shooting capability. Captain Torres approached Hayes with a recommendation that reflected the collective judgment of the operational team. "Ma'am, I believe we need to resolve the equipment issue definitively before proceeding with final preparations. The uncertainty is affecting team confidence and diverting attention from essential mission coordination." Hayes nodded while checking the countdown timer that showed 4 hours remaining before her deadline. The situation had reached a point where further delay would compromise preparation effectiveness regardless of how the equipment question was resolved. Decision time was approaching whether or not Naya provided adequate justification for her choice. Technical Sergeant Malik presented Hayes with his completed analysis of success probabilities under various equipment scenarios. "Ma'am, the mathematical projections show mission success probability of 87% with advanced precision systems versus 12% with iron sight systems under documented environmental conditions." The stark numerical comparison provided Hayes with objective data for making a command decision based on mission requirements rather than individual preferences. The mathematical analysis eliminated subjective judgment from the equation, reducing the choice to simple probability optimization for mission success and team safety. 30 minutes before Colonel Hayes' ultimatum deadline, the preparation area fell silent as heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor outside. The measured cadence suggested senior leadership approaching, and when the door opened to reveal Brigadier General Marcus Hoffman, every person in the room snapped to attention with reflexive precision. General Hoffman entered with the confident bearing of someone whose 4 decades of military service had earned him legendary status within Special Operations Command. His presence transformed the atmosphere instantly, elevating what had been a heated equipment debate into a matter requiring the highest levels of professional conduct and military courtesy. "As you were," Hoffman said, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to command at the strategic level. "Colonel Hayes, I understand there's been some discussion about equipment selection for tomorrow's operation." Hayes stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral despite the surprise of receiving attention from such senior leadership on what had seemed like a routine operational issue. "Yes, sir. We have one team member whose equipment choice appears inconsistent with mission requirements. I've requested technical justification before making a command decision." Hoffman nodded while scanning the assembled team members, his experienced eyes taking in their obvious tension and the advanced precision equipment arranged on nearby tables. His gaze lingered momentarily on each operator before settling on Naya, who maintained perfect attention despite being at the center of the controversy. "Which team member requested non-standard equipment?" Hoffman asked, though his attention seemed already focused on Naya's position near the equipment tables where her hunting rifle stood in stark contrast to the sophisticated systems surrounding it. Sergeant First Class Thorne, sir, Hayes replied. She's requested authorization to deploy with a standard hunting rifle and iron sights for precision shooting requirements at extended range under challenging environmental conditions. Hoffman's expression remained neutral as he absorbed this information, but something subtle shifted in his demeanor that suggested the situation had acquired significance beyond routine equipment selection. He approached Naya's position with deliberate steps that drew the attention of every person in the room. Sergeant Thorne, Hoffman said, his voice carrying a tone that suggested recognition rather than introduction. I'd like to examine your equipment selection and understand your reasoning for this particular configuration. The general's interest in personally reviewing equipment selection was unprecedented in most team members' experience. Senior leadership typically delegated such operational details to subordinate commanders, making Hoffman's direct involvement a clear indication that factors beyond routine preparation were influencing the situation. Sir, Naya replied, her voice steady despite the extraordinary nature of receiving personal attention from general-level leadership. This weapon system provides optimal capability for the specified mission parameters. The configuration maximizes effectiveness based on operational requirements and environmental conditions. Her response maintained the same confident tone that had characterized her position throughout the controversy, but the presence of general-level leadership seemed to have elevated her composure rather than intimidating her into reconsidering her equipment choice. Hoffman examined her rifle with the careful attention of someone whose expertise extended far beyond administrative oversight. His handling of the weapon demonstrated familiarity with precision shooting that suggested personal experience rather than theoretical knowledge of equipment capabilities. Technical Sergeant Malik felt compelled to present the mathematical analysis that had convinced the entire team of the weapon's inadequacy. Sir, we've calculated success probabilities based on documented environmental conditions and mission requirements. Iron sight effectiveness at the specified ranges falls below acceptable thresholds for mission success. Master Sergeant Vance added support to Malik's technical assessment with operational perspective. General, the engagement distances and environmental conditions exceed the capability envelope of standard hunting rifles. We've offered advanced alternatives that provide superior performance for these specific requirements. Hoffman listened to each concern with the patient attention of someone accustomed to weighing complex factors that affected mission success and personnel safety. However, his expression suggested that he was processing information beyond the technical specifications that had dominated the team's analysis. Captain Torres decided to present the broader context that had made the equipment selection a command issue affecting team cohesion. Sir, the unanimous professional judgment of experienced operators indicates that this equipment choice represents unacceptable risk to mission success and team safety. We've requested command intervention to resolve the issue. The appeal to command authority reflected the team's frustration with what had seemed like an intractable dispute between individual preference and collective professional judgment. They were seeking resolution from someone with sufficient authority to make definitive decisions about equipment selection. Hoffman absorbed the accumulated concerns while continuing his examination of Naya's rifle and equipment configuration. His methodical inspection suggested familiarity with a specific weapon system that went beyond casual interest in subordinate equipment choices. Colonel Hayes decided to present the timeline pressure that had made immediate resolution necessary. Sir, we've established a deadline for technical justification of the equipment selection. Mission preparation schedule requires definitive equipment decisions within the next 20 minutes to maintain readiness timelines. The time constraint emphasized the practical reality that further delay would compromise preparation effectiveness regardless of how the equipment question was resolved. Hoffman's unexpected arrival had added complexity to what was already a challenging command decision under time pressure. Suddenly, Hoffman's expression changed as he noticed specific details about Naya's equipment configuration that had apparently escaped the team's attention. His examination became more focused studying particular modifications and adjustments that suggested capabilities beyond standard hunting rifle specifications. Sergeant Thorne, Hoffman said quietly, his voice carrying a tone that suggested dawning recognition. What's your operational call sign? The question about operational call sign hung in the air like an electric charge, transforming the atmosphere in ways that no one fully understood, but everyone could sense. General Hoffman's tone had shifted from routine inquiry to something approaching reverence, and his focused attention on Naya suggested recognition that went far beyond standard personnel review. "Black Falcon, sir," Naya replied quietly, her voice carrying the same steady confidence that had characterized her responses throughout the extended equipment controversy. The two words fell into absolute silence as team members struggled to process what they had just heard. General Hoffman straightened slowly, his expression transforming from curiosity to something approaching awe as the implications of that call sign registered. The change in his demeanor was so dramatic that it immediately captured the attention of every person in the room, though most had no understanding of what had just occurred. Technical Sergeant Malik leaned toward Specialist Cordero, his voice barely audible as he whispered the question that everyone was thinking. "What's Black Falcon?" The name meant nothing to most team members, but Hoffman's reaction suggested significance that went far beyond routine operational identifiers. Master Sergeant Vance had served long enough to recognize when senior leadership encounters something unexpected and profound. Hoffman's careful attention to Naya's equipment suddenly made sense as examination rather than inspection, suggesting that he had been verifying rather than questioning her capabilities. Colonel Hayes watched the exchange with growing awareness that factors beyond her knowledge were influencing what she had considered a straightforward equipment selection issue. Hoffman's behavior indicated familiarity with information that had not been included in standard personnel files or operational briefings. "Sir," Hayes ventured carefully, trying to understand the significance of what had just occurred without appearing ignorant of information that senior leadership obviously possessed. "Should this call sign affect our equipment authorization decisions or mission planning considerations?" Hoffman turned toward Hayes with an expression that suggested he was still processing the implications of discovering Black Falcon among her team members. "Colonel, your precision shooter has been operating under administrative assignment that apparently didn't include her complete operational history. This explains her confidence in equipment selection." The reference to incomplete operational history suggested that Naya's personnel files contained only partial information about her background and capabilities. Administrative assignments often concealed specialized training and experience that remained classified above routine operational clearance levels. Staff Sergeant Kellerman felt compelled to ask the question that reflected everyone's confusion about the sudden change in dynamics. "Sir, could you help us understand how this call sign relates to equipment capabilities and mission requirements? We've conducted extensive analysis showing inadequate performance specifications." Specialist Reeves added his concern about the mathematical impossibilities that had convinced the entire team of equipment inadequacy. "General, the physics calculations remain unchanged regardless of operational call signs. Iron sight limitations at mission distances are mathematical facts rather than matters of opinion or experience." Hoffman nodded in acknowledgement of their legitimate technical concerns while maintaining his focus on Naya's equipment configuration. "Gentlemen, your mathematical analysis is correct for standard operators using standard equipment under normal conditions. However, Black Falcon represents capabilities that exceed normal operational parameters. The suggestion that individual capability could somehow transcend mathematical limitations seemed to defy logic, yet Hoffman's authority and obvious recognition of the call sign indicated knowledge that the team lacked. Senior leadership rarely made statements about operational capabilities without substantial factual foundation. Captain Torres decided to request specific clarification about capabilities that might justify the apparent contradiction between technical analysis and command confidence. "Sir, could you provide operational context that would help us understand how individual capability affects equipment performance beyond documented specifications? Hoffman's response carried the weight of someone drawing on decades of experience with exceptional operators under extraordinary conditions. Black Falcon holds a record for longest confirmed precision shot in military history. 2,400 meters in crosswind conditions using iron sights and standard ammunition. The shot was witnessed and verified by multiple independent observers. The distance figure sent shock waves through the assembled team members who had spent hours calculating impossibility at ranges nearly 1,000 meters shorter. 2,400 meters represented performance that seemed to transcend known limitations of both equipment and human capability. Technical Sergeant Malik struggled to process information that contradicted everything he understood about ballistic physics and precision shooting. "Sir, that distance exceeds the documented capability envelope of any hunting rifle by more than double. How is such performance technically possible?" Specialist Cordero was examining Naya's rifle with new understanding, looking for modifications or characteristics that might explain capabilities beyond standard specifications. The weapon appeared ordinary upon casual inspection, but Hoffman's revelation suggested details that escaped routine examination. Master Sergeant Vance realized that his concerns about team safety had been based on incomplete information about their precision shooters' actual capabilities. If Black Falcon could achieve documented performance at ranges exceeding mission requirements, then equipment limitations became irrelevant factors in mission planning. General Hoffman approached Naya's position with obvious respect for capabilities that he had witnessed or verified through official channels. "Sergeant, these team members have raised legitimate concerns based on incomplete information. Would you be willing to demonstrate why their technical analysis doesn't apply to your operational capabilities?" The request for demonstration provided an opportunity to resolve the equipment controversy through practical verification rather than continued theoretical debate. If Naya could substantiate her confidence with measurable performance, it would eliminate doubt while validating her equipment selection. The transition to the outdoor range occurred in stunned silence as team members struggled to reconcile their mathematical certainties with General Hoffman's revelations about Black Falcon's legendary capabilities. The morning air carried a crisp clarity that would provide ideal conditions for precision shooting, though the distances being discussed still seemed to defy possibility. Naya moved with calm efficiency as she prepared her position at the 1,500-meter line, her movements displaying the practiced precision of someone whose muscle memory had been refined through countless hours of training under extreme conditions. The hunting rifle that had appeared so inadequate during briefing room analysis now seemed somehow different in her hands. Technical Sergeant Malik established himself at the spotting scope, his role as observer taking on new significance as he prepared to witness capabilities that contradicted everything he understood about ballistic physics. The scope's powerful magnification revealed targets that appeared impossibly small even with advanced optics assistance. Master Sergeant Vance positioned himself with range-finding equipment to verify distances and environmental conditions, his skepticism warring with respect for General Hoffman's obvious confidence in Black Falcon's abilities. The wind meters showed variable conditions that would challenge even the most sophisticated ballistic computers. Specialist Cordero examined the target array through binoculars, noting the precision required for hits at such extreme range. The targets represented challenging shots for advanced precision systems under ideal conditions, making the prospect of iron sight accuracy seem even more improbable. Colonel Hayes observed from a position that allowed her to monitor both the shooting demonstration and her team's reactions to what was about to unfold. The equipment controversy that had consumed their preparation time was about to be resolved through practical demonstration rather than theoretical debate. Naya settled into her shooting position with movements that displayed extraordinary economy and precision. Her breathing pattern shifted into the controlled rhythm of someone whose physiological systems had been trained to support extreme precision under pressure. The rifle seemed to become an extension of her body rather than separate equipment. General Hoffman positioned himself where he could observe both the demonstration and the team's response to capabilities they were about to witness. His expression carried the satisfaction of someone who knew that long-held secrets were about to be revealed in dramatic fashion. The first shot broke the morning silence with a sharp crack that echoed across the range before fading into expectant quiet. Through the spotting scope, Malik watched the projectile's impact with disbelief that registered in his voice as he called the result. Hit. Center mass. Perfect placement. The immediate follow-up shot came before anyone had time to process the implications of the first success. Another crack, another perfect impact that sent shocked murmurs through the assembled observers. The iron sights that had seemed so inadequate were delivering precision that exceeded their most sophisticated systems. Shot after shot followed in rapid succession, each impact demonstrating accuracy that seemed to transcend physical limitations. Naya's breathing remained controlled, her movements economical, her concentration absolute, as she delivered performance that redefined everyone's understanding of human capability. Staff Sergeant Kellerman found himself counting impacts through his binoculars, watching target after target receive perfect center hits at distances where advanced systems would struggle for consistency. 15 shots, 15 perfect impacts, all delivered with equipment they had deemed inadequate for the mission. Specialist Reeves was examining environmental conditions that should have made such accuracy impossible, noting crosswinds and atmospheric variations that would challenge ballistic computers to calculate correctly. Yet Black Falcon continued delivering flawless performance without apparent environmental compensation. The demonstration continued until Naya had engaged every target in the array, each shot placing with surgical precision that left no doubt about her capability to exceed mission requirements using her chosen equipment. The mathematical impossibilities that had convinced the team of equipment inadequacy were being systematically disproven through measured performance. Technical Sergeant Malik lowered his spotting scope with an expression of professional humility that reflected complete revision of his technical assumptions. Ma'am, I apologize for questioning capabilities that clearly exceed documented performance parameters. Your equipment selection is obviously appropriate for mission requirements. Master Sergeant Vance nodded in agreement while reviewing the environmental data that made her performance even more remarkable. Sergeant, that demonstration represents shooting that surpasses anything I've witnessed in 20 years of precision training. The team's concerns were based on incomplete understanding of your exceptional abilities. General Hoffman approached Naya's position with obvious pride in capabilities that reflected years of specialized training and natural talent developed to extraordinary levels. Black Falcon, that performance maintains the standard that earned your legendary status. These team members now understand why equipment specifications become irrelevant when matched with exceptional skill. Colonel Hayes felt compelled to address the dramatic revision in mission planning that Black Falcon's demonstrated capabilities represented. Sergeant Thorne, I apologize for the equipment controversy. Your confidence was obviously based on performance capabilities that weren't apparent in standard personnel files. If this demonstration moved you and you enjoyed seeing how hidden capabilities can exceed all expectations, drop a comment and let us know your favorite moment from Black Falcon's story. Maybe you've witnessed similar situations where someone surprised everyone with skills that nobody knew they possessed. Share your thoughts about moments when legends revealed themselves through extraordinary performance. The equipment controversy that had dominated their preparation was now completely resolved, replaced by confidence in capabilities that exceeded mission requirements by substantial margins. Black Falcon had transformed from questioned team member to legendary operator whose presence elevated the entire mission's probability of success.